Whenever.
Good to go. Okay. All right, I think we're live, so we will go ahead and get started. We will call this regular Board of Education meeting to order. The first item, you turn that down. The first item on the agenda is election of officers, and item A is election of president.
I would like to see that we try to maintain our leadership on the board for this next year as we're doing strategic planning. And that way we have some consistency since we're in the whole process.
I move to elect April Pearson as board president.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the table. Any questions? We will vote by roll call. We'll just start and go around the room. Deb? No. Andy?
Yes.
Jason?
No.
Yes. Paige? Linda?
Yes.
Jeff?
No.
April? Yes. Motion carries 4-3. Next is the election of vice president.
I move we elect Jeff Canuso as vice president for the board.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second. Any further questions? Okay, again, we'll take a vote by roll. I'll start. April, yes. Deb?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Paige?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Move on to the approval of the agenda. We approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor, take that by show of hands. Motion carries 7-0. Any communication to discuss? All right, then we'll move on to recognition of guests. So I want to thank everybody for being here this evening, this year, and also joining us from online as well. So thank you all for joining us. Citizens Open Forum, none, anybody sign up? Positive word comments. Do we have anything to share?
I'd like to just again thank publicly the participants in the strategic planning process that we went through last month. We had a really good participation and great input from the community. And I hope that that meeting won't be the end of their communication with us, and they'll continue to share their thoughts with us. And I heard that Wakefield School has some new doors over break, so I want to and that they look great. So thanks for everybody that made that happen.
Anybody else?
I just want to give a shout out to the administrators. We often thank the teachers and the staff in the buildings, but those administrators that are working all day, get it from every direction, and then go to school, sports events and fine arts events and everything on top of it. They do an amazing job. And this year, I mean, we haven't had any, I haven't seen any complaints about our administrators or anything. They just do such fantastic work and really invest their time in our students. I just have to give them the shout out.
Great, thank you.
Let's just say I was at the singing Christmas tree and went off again very well and well attended. Everybody did a really nice job.
And I just sat down to thank everyone for all the Christmas programs, because I know we still had middle and elementary school, and so in high school, just thank you for their extra hours. And then thanks for everyone getting up and running for second semester. It just takes a lot to get everyone back in the buildings and back on schedule, and so.
Yeah, and I wanted to also give a shout out to Chartwell's. You know, I think that they continue to really do a nice job for our district. And, you know, it's obviously a very vital part of what we do for our kids and our staff in our community. So I think that deserves a spot as well. You know, one of the things that became pretty apparent to me when we went to the Wichita to the convention in November was how well received Chartwell is in the community of school boards. And just, you know, what we do every month. They were represented very well. They had a huge following at their table. Their food choices were really by and large really great. And you know, I feel pretty blessed to have them in our district. And not just what we see every day, but what a lot of others that were there at that event, were flocking to them. So I think that speaks volumes to what we have. So I just wanted to give that shout out to everybody that helps with that piece of it as well. So. Anybody have anything else? Okay, let's move on to presentations. The first one is to present policy updates. Couple of different things. So we had some that were presented to us last month. We've had a couple of other additions, and those are called out for us in our notes. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, or if Mr. Nelson, if you have anything further you want to add.
I don't know anything specific, but would be happy to talk through or discuss or answer any questions that we could, but there is a lot, and that's why we do space it out 30 days to ensure that you guys have plenty of time to read through and analyze and make sure that you're comfortable with the policies that you are approving. Almost all of the policy updates come as recommendations from the KSB legal team, so they research and revise and refine the policy, and then bring those recommendations to us. There are a couple in this policy tonight that are not KSB recommended, but are more unique to us. Our building use policies, and there's a policy that's for your review and consideration on INH canine assistance dog policy. There's a lot to tackle and combat with that, and we were able to work with several other districts and work together in developing the language for the policy, and we have sent both of them to KSB for review too. So we haven't heard with the Christmas break and stuff, we haven't heard back yet, but if they have any odd recommendations between now and the next meeting, we'll be sure and share with you. So.
For the canine, when you were getting input and stuff for that, is there any school that currently have it, they're using it, they have it implemented? Have you heard any like?
In specific parts, Deb, or are you thinking?
Just in general, is there anyone that's implementing it that is having like any issues, any feedback that they've given about it?
There is one larger district that has a very similar policy in place, and it's been about 3 years. And so it's according to their soup, it's gone very well. There was one piece we tweaked a couple. It gets pretty complicated, and I've actually dealt with this personally on an and professionally on an educational level. And so it gets really tricky when you have a professional therapy dog or an assistance dog in a school doing a job. Both are jobs that can be done in schools as long as they have the appropriate certification that we've noted and required for any dog working in our schools. When you have individuals that might have allergies or something like that, and it's something that I've dealt with as a principal and a teacher over the years. And it's just really important to have good communication and a plan within the building to accommodate both entities, especially when there's an assistance dog involved. Moreover, because that person with the assistance dog is also entitled to that accommodation in the workplace. And so, but we are also entitled to accommodations for the individual in our facility that might have the allergy. And so it's not a unique problem, and it happens, and it will continue to come up over the years as long as we continue to allow professional therapy dogs. And the big difference between professional therapy and therapy is professional therapy, requires them to pass the Kansas public access test, which allows them into any public building in the state of Kansas. And so it's kind of that highest level of certification that also mirrors the assistance dog requirement. And so it just ensures that we have highly trained animals and dogs in our schools. So.
What about the drug and alcohol testing? Is there any districts that do it for all their staff? We do it for the students, but
I don't know the answer to that, but we can find out pretty quick.
I was just curious. I've had a few people in the community say that we need to randomly drug test our teachers.
The biggest change we are suggesting within ours, and I apologize, there's 3 policies that are a little different. The drug testing policy, which one was that? August.
That's the GA.
GAB.
Yeah.
Currently, it's kind of aligns handbook with practice, but, law requires us to randomly drug test anybody with a CDL. And we have always, as a district, long before my time, included, even non-CDL drivers, like if their main job is transporting students. We have always required them to do it, but we didn't have it written anywhere. And so, so consequences, what happens if that would happen? So we are recommending to put that into policy, include that in policy that says if more than 50% of your job is driving or transporting students, that you're a part of that policy, that you're random drug tested, and that we follow the federal rules as it relates to consequences related if you would happen to have a positive test.
Is random like once a year or like how often is random?
It's a lottery, just like our students that participate. Don't quote me on that. I'm not for sure, but it is a lottery on who they pick, but frequency, I'm not sure.
I was just curious.
Just
Just not to let anybody slip through the cracks. Not that,
I think CDLs don't, with a CDL, don't they have to get a
Yearly.
yearly physical, they have
Yeah.
to every year, so. It would, I mean, so there is that, I'll let you know
But
that that's coming.
students are lottery, every student's assigned a number.
Yeah.
And they say we want number 22, 27, 45, 53. And that's who, regardless of what your name is or who you are, who you're related to.
right,
So
But I can look into that, Jason, if you're curious. On
yeah,
how
I'm
many
just curious.
districts.
well, I assume we would have to assign our bus drivers a number. If we're gonna put that part in that policy. Because it would be, I mean, if you don't want to know who it is, the people doing the testing.
You know,
The only time you want to know who it is if you get positive back,
right,
as far as that goes.
I'll do
Because
it.
that's part of the part about being random and lottery.
So is that gonna be anybody, so just people that drive, transport
50% or more
so
of your job.
like. Coaches or people that drive a bus or that are driving, don't,
If their primary job duty is driving students. Is the current recommendation.
Anything else on policy? Not, we'll move on to consent agenda. Is in there we'd like to discuss?
I have a question on the financials.
Okay.
The following bills are in process and will be added to the list once the statements are received from the vendors. Do we not have a cutoff date? That's,
January 1 was the start of a lot of fiscal years for a lot of businesses right now. So they're all rolling their software. The first actually was on the 3rd, and this agenda went live on the 5th. So they're all kind of contending in the same. The problem that we have with some of them is when we get it, it still has the same due date. So if they can't get their statements kicked out, it still has the same due date when we get in there, and we'll get late fees if we don't hit it. So it's kind of just a
so
way of,
what's the money from Union State Bank for? I mean, they're 4 blocks away.
they are, that's our HVAC lease payment. It just hadn't come in the mail yet, which, I mean, I know how much it is. It's just how much is principal and how much is interest. And that bill's from there.
And Chartwell's, they don't know that they owe, I mean, that should be an automatic to me. I mean, I just guess as long as I've been on the board, this is the first time I've ever seen that. Put it that way, that we're gonna add bills after we have a board meeting and approve bills.
It was more just with how quickly we had to turn everything in from the 3rd to the 5th when the board agenda came.
That's part of them doing business. They gotta do the same thing we gotta do. I mean, as far as that goes.
Yeah.
I mean, or my business or anybody else's business, you gotta pay your bills on time or you're not gonna, or get your statements out or you're not gonna be included in the bills.
I think the difference with us is we only meet once a month. And so if you miss our deadline, that's another 30 days. I think is the big difference with us as a district that we run into a lot is.
American Pest Management couldn't give us a bill for $855 in the last week. That's,
It was just how they generate statements.
Can we do it next week at our meeting?
no, I'm not, I mean, it's whatever, but I'm just thinking for us to have a board meeting and approve bills, and then this is gonna be done after the fact, waiting on the bill, then they ought to wait.
Sure, and the other way we handle it too, Jeff, is if, let's say, we wanted to put these on the run, we would have waited until we got their statement until tomorrow. And then it's posted, our due date's in 2 weeks and there's a late fee, then policy says if there's gonna be a late fee posted, then we go ahead and cut the check anyways to avoid the late fee. And so I think it was just letting you guys know that these are coming, because they, even if they hit tomorrow and their due date's 2 weeks later, we're still gonna pay the bill because we don't wanna set.
Okay, but here's my thing too. All them businesses on there know that we approve bills at our board meeting. And it's the second Monday of the month. It's not the first Monday of the month anymore. If I wanted to get paid $58,000, I darn sure would have got a bill to you so it could be on the bill list. Is what I'm getting at. I know they need to be paid, but we need to let those companies know that, hey, our policy is we approve bills at a board meeting and our board meeting's this date and we need your invoice. And I know the first of the year, whatever, but every business has to deal with that, not just these guys here. So. Okay, that's all I have.
Any other thing on the consent agenda?
And move to approve the consent agenda.
Do you have a motion?
Okay.
Have a second? Any further questions? All those in favor will take a show of hands. Motion passes 7-0. All right, we'll move on to reports then. Any board member have anything to report this month?
I actually have just another session that I went to at KASB that I thought I would share about. I went to a session on providing childcare through the school district, and it was informational. A lot of the districts that were there were from the northwest part of the state that have a special grant to be able to provide childcare through the foundation, and I'm blanking on his name, but you know what, I remember that big Northwest Kansas Foundation. So a lot of them had that, but there was another district that provided childcare as a fee. It was a break-even cost. And they didn't try to make money, but they didn't lose money. And one of the overwhelming things we heard at strategic plan was childcare is so needed in our communities, and I just went with very open eyes to that. And our biggest barrier right now is just we don't have any space to be able to provide that. I think it's one of our biggest barriers. And all of these districts were in communities where their enrollment was really declining, and so they had a lot of empty classrooms in their elementary schools and stuff. So it was very interesting and definitely provided a perk for staff because they would have spots there. They didn't give it to them for free, but they did, reduce the rate or provided a spot available for those staff members. Just thought I would report.
Do they talk about licensing at all, or?
Most all of the districts held the license. And they had a reason for it. It was about like, you then could make more rules or be in charge more of policy and that kind of stuff if they held the license. Which I would have to investigate more on my own, but
They sent us, KSB sent us an email of all the breakout sessions and all the PowerPoints.
Yeah.
Anybody else? I would like to share just one thing that came through KSB to board members really last Friday. one thing that, another item that was talked about extensively at our recent meeting last month was, you know, teacher engagement and retention and how important that is for not only our community, but also for our students and their success and student achievement. And so, you know, there is a session that is offered to really everyone, and that's really what I wanted to make mention of. It's not just to school board members or superintendent or the teachers or the administration, but it's also to the community members. And so if there is someone that is interested in learning more about how that impacts our student achievement and our long-term, you know, relationships that we develop with our kiddos, you know, my email's on the website, the district website. If you want to reach out, I'd be happy to provide details. But there are 5 different sessions for this specific workshop, and over the next like 30 to 45 days. So, you know, we get all of the emails as board members, but to our community, you know, if you're interested, you know, I'd be happy to share some of those details with you about what might help, right? And how we can work on some of those pieces to help achieve some of these goals that we are hearing are important as our, you know, in our community. So I just wanted to share that out. So reach out to me if you're interested. Anybody else? Okay, all right, we'll move on then to Mr. Nelson's report.
I included some information from USA. They help monitor upcoming legislative topics that are going to be important during the next session, and kind of share those down so then we can trickle them to you and you can trickle them to our community. And in regards to school funding, the Gannon guaranteed base aid per pupil goes away and it ends, and it moves towards the 3% or 3-year average of the cost index over of the 3-year average. And so there's some talk that there's some potentially, as they talk school funding, of not following that cost index 3-year average. And so USA is saying, hey, it's highly important. That index has gone up because of inflation. Inflation's gone up means we are spending more money. So it's highly important that that follow the 3-year average. KSD is estimating that to be maybe around 5% increase in base aid, which would be significant and would be an increase that would allow us to do some great work towards salaries, continued work towards salaries. We're monitoring health insurance and property and casualty rates. Those renewals are coming this spring. We're anticipating a significant increase in both, and we just don't know how much yet. High density at risk, there's a provision that has it sunsetting in the future, and so legislators would have to remove that sunset date. And so we did receive high density at risk funding this year for the first time in a long time. I think 11 FTE worth or so. I don't know if that times everybody saying per pupil, it's a significant dollar amount. It's equivalent to probably a teacher salary and benefits. Special education excess costs, I shared those graphs with you on what that means to us locally, but it's generally around $700,000 to $750,000 a year that we supplement special education out of our general fund to meet the federal obligation to educate those students. And so over the last 10 years, as memory serves, it's about $7 million or so that we've supplemented out of general fund that could go back into the classroom to fund all students if the state and met their statutory obligation to fully fund special education. Early childhood, not anything new to us, is also a very top priority across the state to recruit and retain staff. state aid for school bonds, that doesn't apply to us, but in 2015, that state aid sunsetted, so you don't get state aid on a new bond anymore, and so. USA is saying that's highly important to many districts who are growing and need to look at doing a bond. School safety, the Secure Schools Grant Opportunity, that's what was used to help, we help pay for our electronic door access. Saying continue that, set aside that money so that school districts like ourselves can identify areas in which we need to improve safety, keep going with that. Mental health is a huge piece here and everywhere. Stop arm violations. And then you can read capers, information. And then educational governance. This is the last few years when the school finance, it comes time to vote on the school finance bill. Our legislators have used that opportunity, I think every year for the last few years, to put things that aren't related to school finance into that bill to, in my opinion, to force people to vote for it. And so we're saying, please leave school funding and take care of other issues that don't apply to school funding in a different place. It doesn't belong in the school finance package. And so, you know, some of the non-resident enrollment stuff, some of the school choice stuff, some of our legislators are trying to use the opportunity when you pass the school finance bill to lump other things in there, try to get them through. And it's all we're saying, hey, talk about them, discuss those issues. That's fine, but leave it out of the school funding piece. Do it somewhere else. And we are going to, Anita's we'll have, at our next meeting and the following, we're gonna have our local elected representatives and Senate representatives on a Zoom call with our TELEC meeting. And so we're gonna share some of our viewpoints that align to some of these things as they go into session.
You know, Tom Hawk's replacement.
I don't.
I was kind of surprised when she was short.
But I believe she is going to attend. So. Negotiations, time for negotiation. We don't have to do it tonight. We have until March 31st to trade letters, and then we'll likely start. Typically, as we get more data that comes in, and we kind of are able to project a little bit more closely on where we'll end financially and what next year looks like. So I would say by the March meeting, we need to kind of have shored up who you want your reps to be and kind of talk dates and times and when we want to coordinate with CCEA to start meeting with them. Hopefully, I hate to even put a date to it because health insurance, property and casualty are two huge factors that may not, unless there's a lot in our letter trade, a lot of other topics might not be worth meeting too much until we know those two pieces of data. So
Typically, we don't meet until at least after we trade letters. So
I thought it was April.
it's kind of varied every year, but generally speaking, it's not until we know at least the insurance information and then some of the other legislative things that's going to impact the compensation piece. So, you know, that is something that it does take a significant amount of time to meet with that group. And if anybody is interested in, you know, participating in the negotiations group, I am on the committee and would be more than willing to work with others. So if any of you are interested, it's a good way to learn some things and work with the teacher association in that piece. So if you are, so we don't have to determine it tonight, but we will need to, like Mr. Nelson said, by March.
staffing wise, we are certified. We have 5 retirements or resignations. The first phase of Returns and resignations, of course, get stuff posted, get it on the KSD website, get it out there. We've had some luck with Indeed and some different places like that. And then we begin meeting internally. Our admin team meets tomorrow morning. And we will kind of look at all the puzzle pieces as a district, look at all 5 buildings. Consider any transfer requests in district transfer requests. So they're already with us, look at teacher certifications, who fits well, strengths and weaknesses, kind of move some of those pieces. And then allow us to take a look at what we have left, and then we start recruiting. And so that will be hot and heavy the next 30 days. Because it's, you know, kind of January, February is kind of the new May as it relates to certified teacher recruitment anyhow. So we are looking at adding at least right now a half-time intervention, certified intervention support for Wakefield. We believe their needs call for the need for some added FTE to help support some interventions there. We're working with a current half-time employee who is looking to pick up some more time this school year. And so we're hoping that we can get that in place soon this spring to help provide some more intervention support for the students and staff at Wakefield Elementary. And we are also looking with high density funding that we did receive. Our likely later this spring we'll be looking to add a more permanent added FTE in that arena to provide more intervention support for a school district. At this time, that need appears to be Wakefield Elementary School. We would continue to monitor that need, assuming you guys would approve us to add that FTE for next school year. It looks like that need would be placed at Wakefield for next year for some added intervention, certified intervention FTE. Other than that position, we're looking to stay FTE neutral as we go into next year as a school district. And then you, as a board, you would kind of ask for what our training plan might look like. Jesse and our nursing team kind of met, developed a plan, talked with principals, and so it's kind of a phased plan over time to make sure that we have people trained and ready to do that. So.
Any questions for Ms. Johnson? Anita's not here this evening, but anything anybody wants to discuss in her report?
Super exciting to add the behavioral, student behavioral support, as we've discussed and talked about, not just here or in our telec, all across our state. Can those more significant explosive scenarios and needs within students have really surfaced this year. And so traditionally the telex had one behavioral specialist that supported all 5 school districts. And so we added another one, as you know, you approved us to do that. And so they will look to divide the telec somehow to where they're not all going to all 16 buildings. So they're looking at a reasonable, logical way to split the telec into kind of 2 parts, so that behavioral support person can really get to know their staff in those buildings, because it's a lot, 16 buildings for one person. And so if they'll be able to divide that down to 2, I think that will really help. I think and she mentions it in here as it relates to space, and serving those extra needs has become a significant challenge, in particular at the elementary level in Clay Center. You know, Lincoln's using every ounce of space in their building. They moved a classroom into intervention teacher. They moved some different places into some storage closets and made those, they don't look like storage closets as they're warm and welcoming, but they are literally using, you guys saw the shed that was in the capital outlay plan. That was so they could clear everything out of storage stuff, put it outside, and make another learning space within their building. But they are literally do not have another ounce of space. in that building. And so, and that's, and we can maintain and get by, but when you have some of those students that require significant need, they require a lot of space, and lots of times it's one-on-one or one-on-two. And so, just something to be aware of and something that we're continuing to evaluate and be creative. And that team's done a great job down at Lincoln meeting those needs this year. And they've dealt with some, at both, all three elementary schools in our school district have varying needs this year that have consumed a lot of time.
Speaking of space at Lincoln. Originally, those preschools were through the telec. Does it depend on the classroom, whether it's through the telec or whether it's an at-risk through our district?
In what regard?
So our all-day pre-K is using at-risk funding.
Mhm.
So that's just our district's preschool.
Well, they're all our district's preschool.
Okay,
And so
so they're not. I'm just thinking about the space. What is telec? What is?
They're all 379 kids.
Yeah.
Yes, I know they're all
They're no
379
longer,
kids.
We're
So
not the
even like-
host for the tele.
We're not the host for the telec preschool, but
There's preschools and other.
But
parts
are
the
some of
co-op.
those technically telec teachers with? You know what I'm saying?
So it's only a telec, only expense if it's a
Oh, if
place
it's
where
it's
all
a group,
telec kids can come.
okay.
So we are required to serve our students that qualify, no
The
matter
reason I
what.
asked was thinking that we continue to see the state is advocating for early childhood. And I am a strong advocate for early childhood. We are running out of space in that building to provide more early childhood services. And so I was just asking, is that our decision or is that a telec decision? And it's our
ours,
decision.
because they're all our students.
Yeah.
And we're required to serve them.
That's
the
great.
biggest-
I just was curious
Yeah.
what the hierarchy of decision making went through all of that. And last year in February, we did a child check at Wakefield. And so that's another area where the person that was at my table for strategic plan was advocating for more early childhood and all of those things. Even if we get more funding, we have to have room for them.
The challenging part with preschool is, especially as we talk, our 3-year-olds
Yeah.
and 4, but especially 3 is. If those students qualify for services, we are required to provide those services. But also least restrictive environment says that when we serve them in a preschool setting. That to meet least restrictive guidelines, we should not have more identified kids than non-identified students in that classroom. Right now, our ratios are holding fine right there, but so a 3-year-old could walk in tomorrow. And if they qualify for
Right, they have a
services-
birthday on January 10th, so we serve them on January 10th. But then you're saying we would need to add a peer to make sure those ratios.
So we started the year with the slot format, which is something that we have never done before. And so we established every preschool room based on slots.
Okay,
And so we would never overfill a room. And that slot ratio is always going to be one more non-identified student than an identified student to ensure we never go over that 50% ratio.
right,
And so we have room for movement because you have to build in room because you
you
just
have to.
3 and 4-year-olds, you never know who's going to qualify and come through the door
Mhm.
or hit that come out of, parents as teachers or infant toddler
Mhm.
and qualify. And so,
And a lot of times you do know potentially who those
Mhm.
students are. But yeah, I just wanted a little bit more clarity in my own.
so
Mind
TELEC's
where that-
only decision-making factor is how many certified teachers they're going to pay for to run that part of TELEC. And so it's our responsibility, just as it is Miltonville Glasgow's, to provide the room, the space, the furniture, whatever it is to serve that student. Or the same for Riley. They have to provide that space, that building, that facility to serve their students that qualify.
Right,
TELEC just decides how many teachers that's gonna take and how many teachers they're gonna
Okay.
fund to serve each district. And so like my first year here, we were still considered a TELEC preschool program
Okay,
because Miltonville Glasgow
correct. That
students
was my,
would come here to get their services. They no longer do that.
okay,
So Telec is either providing itinerant services there or they're going into another preschool. that
when I
would be
had
there.
students at that preschool, there were students that came from other districts, and so that's why I was. I don't want to say under the impression, but I don't have students that age anymore, so as if you as a parent age out, you're
And that's been new the last few years.
okay.
All the other outlying districts have come up with strategies and ways to implement their own preschool programs.
Great.
And then it's the Telec's responsibility to determine how they're going to serve those students who qualify as IEPs within their program.
So what happens if, you know, the rooms are at about capacity and let's say we have a set of triplets, special need come in and qualify? How do we don't have the ability to say, no, we can't serve you.
We can, so you can go over the 50% ratio. You just get, for lack of a better term, a ding from the state when you do your audit in the spring, because you show you're over 50% identified students. So that would be option number one. In the future, as I think I shared last year, our hope was, we believe we have good adequate space to be able to add a program in Wakefield and to serve the southern part of the county. We just didn't get that need at Child Check. We didn't, we sent email after email and Facebook posts and trying to garner interest. And so I think to do it, we'd have to have a minimum of probably
10.
you would do less than 10 because you could build room to grow. So I think. Yeah, I hate to even name a
Right.
number, but that's would be our hope again, would be to look at finding a way to do that. If the need was there. Had some, hopefully, and maybe in the future,
Well, hopefully that's something we can cultivate, from my conversation at my table, that was very high need in their community and, potentially the other preschool in town is not gonna look the same next year, and so, hopefully.
and our
we can-
hope is, we have a Head Start and that serves Clay County too. And so this may not be a next year thing, but at some point in the future, maybe there's opportunity for us to collaborate and coordinate and do some things together to help serve different parts of our county.
That would be a great resource for our citizens.
And they're going through some leadership change now too, and maybe once their new leadership gets on board, we can continue to have some discussions in that arena too.
What's the potential to take some of them kids out of Lincoln and put them at the Head Start? If we did collaborate with them,
It's,
I mean, to create space.
so the big thing is right now, their federal Head Start grant doesn't. There's a grant, they have a lot of rules and regs that they have to follow, and so there would be just off the cuff. Sharing and combining seems really simple, but living with somebody who deals in that every day, combining and braiding is very complicated. It can be done, it just takes a lot of time and thought process to be able to make sure you meet special ed, whether it's at-risk funding, special ed funding, Head Start funding, and you have to be super careful to be able to.
So many kids they have in that Head Start doing.
We met with her, I can't remember the exact number, but they're writing their new 5-year grant now for the number of slots that they will need. And I can't, I'd be wrong if I tried to spit it out. I can't remember.
I just know the state also is looking at that early childhood funding, and I don't want to leave that money on the table. If we have the opportunity to serve students, but we also don't have space to serve students. So I just, in Jeff's question too, I was thinking, what are the rules of where students can be served if it's not a school building, and how does that look if other districts get creative with how you?
And next year, the 3 and 4-year-old 0.5 at risk is available, but the KPP, which comes through the Children's Trust, no new monies, in fact.
Okay.
I was gonna say the state's thinking they're gonna try to push that, but they can't fully fund special ed.
They
I mean, that
can't,
doesn't even make sense.
but the KPP, we can't ask for more than we asked this year, and in fact, should prepare to possibly get a little less, but that's different than at-risk funding as well. So
Right.
again, we're getting into probably 4 or 5 different
Different,
sources
yes.
for early childhood. Okay, yep.
And I'm ignorant on what level of services that Head Start can provide. Did they provide the same level of therapies that our preschool does? Thinking.
So we serve any student in general, if a student that goes to Head Start qualifies for an IEP, we provide those services.
So they come over to us and go back to them during the day.
That's one model, but either way, USD 379, we're required to provide those services regardless of where that student attends.
So when I talk about capacity in the classroom, it's not like we can say, okay, well, you're gonna go to Head Start, because we don't have room for you in this classroom. That's not an option.
Because we are obligated by law to serve that student. Pretty complicated. I'm excited though. I think while it's a challenge, I think there's a lot of potential opportunity as a county to do some really good things in this arena. And hopefully if we can, work together and break down some silos, find some ways to collaborate, I think we could provide good services to students. So.
Good discussion. So if nothing else, then we'll move on to Jacqueline's report. Give her a report.
Okay, to start my report, I just kind of gave you a little glimpse into the ELA curriculum review. We're starting some pilots. Both of our trainings went really well. Last Friday and today was elementary, so it's been nice to see some good quality resources with our teachers and that they're trying out.
So they're piloting the one that they're hoping to use.
They're piloting one or two, depends on the
Okay.
group, but yeah, the ones that they kind of narrowed down had most of the things that they were kind of
wanted.
looking for.
Okay.
Like everything else, prices have dramatically changed in the last 6 years. And so that will play into our timeline and kind of what we're looking at. So we need them to go through some pilot before we really can dive into that part. But it's nice to see them excited and then, as the training was going on, they're like, oh, like, I've been waiting for that. Like, that will be helpful to me. And we hope that it, first and foremost, provides good reading instruction for our kids, but also helps them to be creative in how they teach it, not what they have to go find. And so that has been good for them to see that in their eyes as well. So,
And on the funding, just a reminder, we did set aside a certain amount at risk, assuming that our newly adopted curriculum will meet the research-based guidelines. It will, and textbook. So those are the two funds now. We may have to look where we're gonna find more, I think.
Yeah.
When that time comes, so.
and then the next part I put on my report just kind of touches base, it kind of all connects into our school improvement, district improvement process. So once you guys set your goals and district leadership team works on what that looks like as a district, we will be putting into place not only the PD, but I know our counselors and teacher reps have come to us, talking about character education, career development, employability skills, all those pieces that kind of build that foundation for social and emotional learning. So we don't have an answer yet. We don't know what that will look like. We know, just in speaking, like you don't start a new ELA curriculum, an instructional PD, and another like character curriculum. You can't start all three of those at the same time. So, but ESSER funds is going to play into that PD and that second paragraph that I mentioned. So we'll have kind of a timeline. We, probably a 2 to 4. I said 3 year, I think in here, but kind of a plan on how that looks. So more of that will be coming. Summer learning, we're working on that, trying to get the details out. It might seem like summer's far away, but it's not when you start planning that. So we are meeting this week to kind of look at budget and finances and where we're at, so we can start getting staffing set up as well as student information for parents as well. So
Jacqueline, I might just add to that. She mentioned we're of the meeting, but we teeing that up. We know that we have until X date of 2024 to spend our ESSER dollars. You guys approved the next 2 summers to allocate towards summer learning. And so that's what Jacqueline's referring to. We're going to get together and say, all right, here's what we have left. Here's how we can maximize this during summer learning for the next couple of summers. So
And just out of curiosity, did we see a pretty steady summer learning from the 2 years, or did one, did it go up? Did it go down? I'm
As
just,
far as
I'm just trying to
our
get
attendance,
attendance,
Attendance.
students served.
our students served, it stayed about the same.
Okay, I was just curious because, if it dropped, then you're lessening the amount of money you need because you need less staff. If it goes
Right.
up, you need more staff, it takes more money, so.
I think we probably saw more coming and going second year, parents just.
Yeah, drop them off.
Yeah, and I think they
randomly.
enjoyed the flexibility, this is the week I want and this next week I don't, or.
Mhm.
Some, maybe they were involved in the fair and the first time they tried to go back and forth and they realized I can't manage that, so instead I'm just.
Or swimming lessons or whatever.
Or my swimming, yeah, so, we did have really good interest in our middle school programming and, had a pretty good turnout, at the high school level for credit recovery, so. But again, we're kind of, Lisa's running numbers on how many students
Qualify at the secondary level.
possibly need that, so
Okay.
that'll play into our budget planning as well. I just kind of listed, some of our upcoming, PD things kind of going on, as far as, summer after school, during the day, not many. And I want to show you real quick, we talk about state assessments and sometimes that makes people have bad feelings. But I know Brett and I talk a lot about really referring it to, looking at standards and how we're doing instructionally. And so I have an example here, and I want to explain it. I'll zoom in a minute, but we give interims as well. And they had a different name, I know, when I was teaching at Wakefield in middle school, but I used them at the end of a unit. Because I didn't create them, the curriculum didn't create them, it was an outside source just to check in and see, did I do my job? Like, where are my kids? And so the state offers these, and this is an example from 3rd grade. And what I'd like to show is I obviously blocked out the student names, there's the student numbers. But when our teachers get these reports, C means correct and I means incorrect. All right, I can't see exactly how the kid answered, as a teacher, I know most of them, like this is a math example, but I have them keep their work, so then I can look at it, where did they make the mistake if they did miss it? But across the top, and I just showed the first 4 questions because I thought it was really a good example. It has the standard or the question, the content, what was asked of the kids. And so if I'm looking at this as a teacher, I'm like, ooh, I see a lot of greens in the first 3, and then all of a sudden I see a lot more reds. But if you read at the top, it's the first 3 are multiplication. The first 2 are some basic, and then it's actually putting them into a problem. And then the 4th one is moving on to division. So this particular example, they hadn't even got to division yet. So the teacher's like, that makes sense. I haven't done division yet, but it does tell me there's a few kids who already have it. But I have done these multiplications. Oh, well, this kid just moved in. That makes sense. I need to spend some time, or this kid's always had it. What went on? And they can see an example of the problem and go back and touch base with the kids. But this is just a kind of a glimpse of instructionally what they get.
And you can
On
see
those
how your
interims.
class did on that particular standard percent wise too.
Yeah, well, and what we do is, this comes out in an Excel. Some people like to turn the C's into a 2 and the I's into a 1. I like to turn the C's into a 1 and the I's into a 0, because I just want to know straight up how many got it, how many didn't. It kind of depends on how you want to do it. Sometimes there's a PC for partial credit. So if you're doing that, but you can turn those into numbers and then calculate how many. You look across and say, okay, where am I struggling, or where's my class struggling? And oh, well, I have not done that, so that makes sense. Or I have done that. Ooh, let's go back and revisit that. So That is very, very helpful.
There's a lot of them up there where they're incorrect for the first two, but then they were correct in the word, and that seems backwards.
It does. It does.
That's
If you-
because
if
they
you
were
were-
really divided on the first two.
But I mean, it's not just like one outlier. It seems like, I mean, there's,
But
you know, there's
but
quite a
stuff
few on
like
there
this
that do that.
gives you. It gives you good information to help change what's going
Well,
on.
my
in your
thing is if
region.
a student can solve multiplication in a word problem, they ought to be able to do the other two. So I'm wondering why they missed the other two.
Well, and they could have on a word problem. They
Guessed
read it and they
correctly.
understood it and they guessed a number of that, you know, they could have
Makes
done that
sense.
too.
There's too many, there's too many. The odd, I mean, the odds of that many people getting it right. are-
Well, the first
would not count.
three is about the same amount of people had eyes
Mhm.
Yep.
compared to the last. The last one, what I would say would be a section they hadn't covered yet.
Yeah,
And
definitely. was.
Randy Watson's talked a lot about state assessments and, you know, any of us that were around when No Child Left Behind was here, it can give you a negative, bad feeling because of that, you know. That was a hard time to be an educator, but we still have to assess our instruction, our teaching and learning. We got to do it. And so a lot of people, I've been talking a lot to our admin team about, you know, let's look at this not as a state assessment, but the state assessment is based on the standards that we signed up to teach. So let's look at this at how we're teaching the standards, not a state assessment. And so this is just a nice example of an interim before you get to spring that's based on your grade level and content standards that we can provide an assessment to our students and then use it to reflect globally on how our instruction is impacting student learning on the standards. And so look at it as we're testing how we're teaching the standards, not necessarily a state assessment. I don't know if it helps or not, probably not. But Randy's talked extensively about the fact that, hey, we still have to have a results function to what we do. And it's a tool, yeah.
And then something just to note, English, math and science are done on the computer where there's questions, pick your answer or whatever it may be. Social studies is a classroom performance, which is nice because the teachers can take an activity they're already doing. And I'll use a fourth grade example. They make a regional brochure and they have 3 different components in a rubric and teacher scores them. If they do more than one of those assessments in a year, you take the highest score, you saw the kid perform at, and we submit it through Power School at the end of the year. So social studies is a little bit different. It's not about regurgitating dates and that kind of thing. It's more, you know, applying things that you've learned and things that you know. So and then the last thing I have on my report is a little tech update from Ben. Because of our E-rate, we have to do a bid process for items that don't even meet that $20,000 threshold. And so we did that for our internet contract, our firewall, Wi-Fi maintenance. Those are all normal things that we always do. But one thing that is on or was on the technology budget, we budgeted 2,700 and it was for our battery backups and they came in under that. All the other items, when we look at our regular billing and what we've been paying and moving forward, they'll be at or below what we're spending yearly. So that was positive. So. Oh, and I did put on here, I had sent this out to our staff. It was kind of just an update. It's at the bottom of my report, but it's an update on our IPS work-based learning. So we are part of a Perkins Reserve grant, and with that, we turn in data on how our IPS implementation is going, as well as our work-based learning opportunities. So I put those graphs and charts in here, and they're fine to look through for Q1, but we're getting ready to turn in Q2, and so the next one will show that difference as far as areas we've increased or done more in. But the IPS report shows 8th grade through 12th grade, and that's district-wide. And then our work-based learning shows elementary, middle, and high school. And one thing that has been really nice, since she came on board, Lisa last, is I would say our connector between our buildings. To make sure, that different pieces are going on at each building. There's different people working on different parts, and it looks different at each building. But she is the one going in between all of them, making sure the different pieces are there. So it's been great. But this is just that data just to share back with you. And as soon as I get the Q2, we'll make sure you guys get a copy of that as well.
Further questions for Jacqueline? Thank you. We'll move on then to the next item, which is the maintenance reports with our director, Craig Christopher. So, nice to have you. Anything you want to share on your report?
It's busy.
Or answer questions if needed?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any questions for?
Jason couldn't be here tonight. He a little under the weather, so told him to stay home. We don't want to. So Craig's here to represent, and they kind of just bulleted out some things that they've been working on, some things that are coming in. Take questions if you have them.
How's the new work ticket system? It says it's working well, but how's that going for you?
That's going really well. I mean, I need to check off probably every half hour, but it's usually once a day and. So
Yeah,
get a little busy but usually in the morning I'll check it out. It's usually the kitchen stuff. You gotta order everything for that or have somebody come check that, so that's frustrating to me, but. Gotta get that.
but now you have a system at least for announcing the things that are needed,
Yeah,
right?
a good reminder.
A good reminder, okay?
Repeat customers.
Yeah.
I'll just pop, Craig's done a great job onboarding. He's about 4 or 5, 6 months in now and learning baptism by fire, but we're thankful to have him and think he's doing a really nice job. And, when you're a one-man guy for 5 buildings, you're running. And we just want to say we appreciate him.
Likewise. Anything for Craig? Anybody?
Any bites on the custodial positions?
Not yet.
Thank you for all you do. It's not probably acknowledged often, so the
So
buildings wouldn't be up and running without you. We appreciate
So all the pictures of the roofs. I can't get the last little thing to open up on my screen. It doesn't give me permission to open it.
It's just an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah. But are we doing, so the ones that just say 2023, that's what we're doing this fall, this spring or summer or?
Well, I don't know if the auditorium got pushed in before the high school mechanic shop. I'm thinking that's more important to get done.
My map says that the auditorium is replaced in 2023 and the workshop is 24.
This is something to always remember, 23 and 24, you think, but we'd always think fiscal year. So 23, if it says 24, it could be this July, or it
Okay.
could be next June.
Next spring,
Okay.
yeah.
It just depends on when it hits, but that's Jim with Ray Roofing comes and does an annual roof audit and monitors any of ceiling cracking, and then he comes and gives us usable life that's left, and then we, as you know, in July, when we do budgeting, we go over our capital outlay plan and we look at that 1 year, what are we doing during that year? And then we know all the years after that are moving targets and that will move around, but we try to set those for the current year in stone in July when we do budget. And then this spring, we'll start planning with our admin team, Craig and Jason and everybody that's involved on priorities, what's popped up during the year, what do we need to move around in the capital outlay plan and have that ready for you guys to look at for the following fiscal year in July when we do budget. I did add something in board docs today. You'll get to it, but when you set board meeting dates, it was a good reminder. Do we want to do facility tours again? And something for you guys to consider if you want to add that to the
List of
dates. So it
Okay.
might tie in.
Okay, back to roofs, middle school. It doesn't have any dates on any replacements, but it's got some cost figures down in the bottom. Whether that's something that's already been done, or that's something we're thinking about.
Yeah,
or-
so we
Because
have.
one of them's 410,000, the other's 790,000.
Right, so that's just for us to remember, so, and we hit that storm in my first August.
That's where it's
And then-
metal.
And then we did a respray on the whole rest of the roof. It was a coating and it lasts 10 years. And so that cost, I asked him to put to the side of what today's cost would be to add TPO, because we're gonna have to do TPO to that in the road. So that was 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So in 6 to 7 years, we're gonna have to put a TPO. And so you can tear all that off and come back all new. And that's the higher cost one, or you can put TPO right over what we have, because there's only one layer on it now, and that's cheaper. And so that's just a reminder of what we'll have to do in about
Well,
7
I'd rather
years.
do the overlay because it's better material.
Right, yeah, I mean, he
I mean,
just
the
gave
one's
us
115 mil, and the other's only 60 mil. I mean, if they tear it all off, that's what, okay, so that's something down the road.
That's just, I asked, so we had a good idea.
I just seen there was no dates on the middle school at all, so it was just, but that was the only one that had any dollar figures on it.
And the time continuum, that spreadsheet is the one that has all the costs associated.
Yeah, I
with
couldn't
it.
get that to come, I'd have to look at it on the other computer, so I couldn't get it to come up on.
But our hit list is, we've made a lot of improvements in the last few years, and we only have a handful left to do in the next 4 to 5 years, and then we'll be set for 15, 20 years before we have to do another roof if we don't get that going, so.
The time wise, this is looking at the summer. We'll probably get most of these roofs done.
Almost always summertime, yeah. And this year, I'll just go back and look really quick. I don't think we have any for June scheduled, but we have a few that we'll be recommending to you guys for 2024, which would either be July or next June.
This
Or-
So
Or-
something to keep in mind when we're thinking about summer programming, if that big of part of Lincoln is gonna have to be taken care of. In 2024, it won't affect this summer, but
Yeah, and you know, another thing to think, you can, even if you do 2024, if we have a usable life. And we want to try to get it to the following July when we don't have summer learning. Get it towards the tail end. We can bring Jim out and say, hey. Can we get to here? And 9 times out of 10, he'll say, yeah, don't worry about it. And when they come out, they don't charge us to fix leaks. They're just our roofer and they have little things to do. They just take care of it. It's a great company to work with. They always take care of us. And they certainly don't nickel and dime us every time they come out here, which is a huge change from a number of years ago. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, now I'll move to the discussion of business items. We have a few here to discuss. The first being the 23 board meeting dates. The dates are listed there. There are a couple of things to consider. The facility tour, as Mr. Nelson mentioned, and also been brought up by a board member. Previously brought to my attention, and then the second thing is the spring break meeting in March. So we need to decide how we want to handle those two things. Any suggestions from anybody?
Has it ever been an issue before that spring break meeting? The reason why I brought that up big time last year is because we were in the midst of like controversy and there was high attendance at the board meetings. Teachers were taking vacation during that time, but they wanted to be able to be at board meetings and see what's going on and all of that. Hopefully, we're not in that same position at this, spring break board meeting this year. Has it ever been an issue in the past? I mean,
It's been moved in the past.
Mhm.
It's been moved to a different date in the past, because I'm just, thinking teachers especially, they're on spring break and they are a factor in our,
I just know that if we move it, it needs to be to the first Monday because of paying bills, which we had trouble with last year.
right?
When we,
The first almost makes it harder.
It'd be better if you went back,
okay,
but just for what we talked about before, getting receipt of things.
And get a treasurer statement done and everything
Treasure
else.
statement, bank reconciliation, there's a lot that happens in a really,
I just know last year when we moved it back, it was pointed out that it was,
we did have to pay some earlier with our manual bill run, but we have that every, like the city of Wakefield,
Yep.
we always have to pay that before the board meeting, because I mean, that's one that's just standing that will have late fees if we don't pay them.
okay. I need to get my phone out.
But if you want to move it up.
No, I just remember specifically that issue.
My preference is just to keep it the same. Especially since they have the ability to connect and watch, and stay with it, and in that way, the community knows that it's always same date of the month.
And that is true, that is a new, we didn't have that last year, so.
You guys have any suggestions or recommendations? On
Yeah,
spring
I
break
think
week?
when we've lived in the past, it was because I think board members were gonna be on, I think taking spring break. was taking care of the stuff, so.
I know Debbie and Jeff have mentioned that they're.
I won't be here, so you do whatever you want. I won't be here on March 13th.
Would you like to move the date so you can be present?
20th or the 6th, and she soon be going to the 20th and the 6th, so it's up to you guys. I mean, if you want to leave it to 13th, then I just won't be here.
Then last year on our facilities tour, didn't we approve the bill list or something along those lines?
We had hirings.
That's
I
what.
don't know if we did any bills, but we did have hirings that we did.
It's better for board members. We can sure move it on the 20th. I know Debbie, you try to go visit your family during that time. And that is,
That happened to be my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, so we did a special trip that we don't always do. But like, I would feel like board members should be able to take a vacation during that time if they have family members that are off that week. Like Jeff's wife is off that week, so
I'm fine. I'm here.
I'm fine with moving it as well. What about the facility tour? So we did that early March, I believe, if that's correct, last year. That's something that we want to do as well, and is that a good month or? Better.
For going outside and looking at routes, I prefer a non-February date. If I have to choose. But I can be very flexible with what works for other people.
Anyone else have any suggestions?
I don't see anything on the school calendar for the 6th. Right, basketball, state basketball's after that.
State basketball will be later in the week.
Yeah.
Facilities tours was March 2nd last year.
It wasn't bad, it wasn't pretty bad.
Doesn't have to be a Monday.
It was a Wednesday.
No, just looking at the school calendar
Yeah.
and everybody's kids and activities, Monday nights.
I guess, do we want to do a facility tour? Is probably the question that we need to ask.
Or do you want to have a meeting and then go do the facility tour, so you're not doing two things at once? You could consider that too.
So where are we at on the board goals, February, March?
Well, he Britton's here next month, on Monday, a week from today, to take a look at those, and a lot of that's gonna depend on how you guys feel about it.
So
But-
either could be, we approve the goals or move forward, I should say approve, move forward, or we have more meetings. in
Revisions to
February.
do, and you want me to
Okay.
talk about.
Okay.
But, the hope would be that we wrap those up in the next month. At some
By
point.
March, we would be done.
Mhm. But if you did the sixth, maybe, I'm just throwing it out there, maybe you guys don't like it, but you could possibly have your regular meeting. And then, or end with a regular meeting.
I like that idea. Start at maybe 4:30 or something like that.
You have
And
to go
then-
earlier than that, and
Yeah.
go to all the facilities,
Yeah,
more like noon,
Noon.
1,
Mhm.
then go to all the buildings and then come back here and have a board meeting.
I think, does anyone remember, we started in the morning and finished at what? 2?
We started right at school starting time. It was like 8. I don't mean, I didn't have to. It's what the kids to school, so it wasn't early.
Yeah, like that was where we started.
Uh-huh. We finished by 2. I think it was around 2.
Yeah.
Which if you started at 1, you'd be done by 5.
See some after school programming that you wouldn't normally see.
Mhm.
So could we do that on the 20th?
Or the 6th. I'm fine with either.
Andrea was saying it would be better if we did it later on the 20th. Would be better.
How about we had the board meeting on the 8th, it's the middle of the week.
And you're gone.
No.
No,
it's
he's
the
not
week-
gone till the
I'm leaving.
12th.
I
10th,
believe
11th.
the 10th.
State basketball start. Would they
That's-
have it?
State basketball
that
would
week.
start Wednesday, Thursday,
Yeah.
Friday, Saturday.
Day would start. The 8th.
Part of them would start on Wednesday, Thursday, second round be Friday.
I teach a class on Wednesday night, so I would like to avoid Wednesday if
Yeah.
possible.
So yeah, let's look at the 20th, because then track hasn't started, but other winter sports are done. We don't really have a lot of concerts usually that early. in the
Not the
year.
first day, it's the
Except
after
first
spring
day
break.
after spring break. Be pretty quiet.
That, I mean, yeah. That's what you guys. can
So
do.
March 20th at 1:00, facility tour followed by board meeting.
What time do you want, August will need to publish, what time do you want to start that meeting?
6:00, same time. That way. we
And
have
1
an
o'clock
hour
for
to-
the facility tour? Will that, is 1 o'clock for the facility tour, okay? Will that keep us moving?
But we were like 8
have
to
to set it
2, so
8:30.
it's 4, 5, 6 hours. on
And we did
facility.
lunch.
And we ate
And we ate
lunch,
lunch.
so if you skip the lunch part, start at 1, we should be done by 5 or 5:30.
Yeah.
Hey, and if
We'll
we're
have to
not,
keep
we're
it-
done at 5.
We have to keep it then.
You know, if the meeting's starting at 6, we're done.
I move that we approve the dates as presented and then the date for March to be on the 20th. To begin at 1:00 for facility tour and the regular scheduled board meeting at 6 p.m.
Second.
The motion is second. Any further questions?
Are we gonna start the same route that we did last time, start at Wakefield and then move to the other schools, so that we end here?
Yeah.
We'll send a schedule out to you ahead of time, based on, we'll kind of see what's going on in some buildings and maybe some things that you try to strategically plan it. So you can maybe be at the elementaries when they're doing after school program. I think that's kind of a neat thing that you don't normally see.
The motion is second. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Next item is to review the calendar or approve the calendar for 23-24. Any questions about the calendar?
And there is a calendar committee that comes up with this proposal, is that correct?
They give input to different months. The district leadership team gives input as well. They start. District leadership team gives input and there's building reps. That we kind of go through each month. So, and then the telex has seen it so, as well.
I move to approve the calendar as presented.
Second. Okay, motion second, any further questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. And then last item on business and discussion items is graduation requirements. More just informational.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a little crash course.
Okay.
Please don't like go. This is just chicken scratches for you to review, okay? And the only reason,
out here, Jacqueline.
well, I'm gonna go through a little chart.
Oh, okay.
I
See if I can graduate.
So a lot of this has been obviously approved at the state level and is still, they're still ironing out some details. So I'm gonna go through those, and what I want to do tonight is just show you or talk about the current state graduation requirements, our current graduation requirements, the new state graduation requirements, and then you'll notice that last column is just blank because we have a team that we will be putting together to look at ours, the adjustments that need to be made, and bring you something to look at in May. And then our hopes would be that by August, you approve it. So that would give us a couple months in June and July in case we need to make adjustments. Just to preface the reason why for the August piece is the new graduation requirements. Originally, when they came out, they were going to start with this year's 8th graders. That is challenging for two reasons. Number one, they've already started their IPS process. They already have 4-year plans. I get it, they're all gonna change, but they've already been thinking of these things. And number two, I saw the technology side, like your student information system, whatever you use, like. We have to have you guys approve, like your local boards have to approve before you put those into place, and they're like doing that now. So, they got that memo within the first few hours of sending that out. And so it's really looking at the class of 2028, which is our current 7th graders. So if our graduation requirements for that could be next year's 8th graders is in place by August, that will help in as those kids develop their individual plans of study. So I'm just gonna run through each line and just kind of talk about them just to you. No recommendations, obviously. I mean, that whole group needs to get together and kind of our admin team's gonna talk tomorrow about what that looks like. We know there's teachers and who needs to be on it. And who needs to give some input to it. And so if you look at the total credits on the first line, the current state graduation requirements is 21. We are at 25. I'm actually on a advisory committee with Dr. Watson, and he reported that 25 to 29 is that the range that districts are using. Nobody's at 21. That's the state minimum. So we're at 25. Some are up to 20, 28 or 29, and that's typically a high school that blocks. Typically, so you can see we're at 25 right now, and the state will stay at 21. They just made adjustments with them. Currently, the state requires 4. Let me make that bigger so people can see. Okay. Currently, the state requires 4 ELA credits. So do we, and it will drop down to 3.5. And the reason why is below. Presently, the state does not require a communications credit. We do. And that is what they're putting in place for everybody. And that has been in place for a very, very long time. Here in 379. In math, there are no changes. It stayed at 3. And science stayed at 3. The one that was offered is STEM. Or the one that has changed is STEM. So in addition to your 3 science and your 3 math, you have to have 1 STEM elective. Let me give you some examples of courses that would count for that. And the state is working kind of on a list. So, physics in the science realm would count. Chemistry would, if it's not your 3rd science credit. So if you have a different 3rd science credit. And math, trig, pre-cal, college algebra, those would count. all of the courses at the upper level in construction and ag would count. So if you think of the courses that AJ, Brandon, Brad, Andrea, Ashley, those would count.
As long as they're not an introductory.
As long as it's not at the beginning level. Yeah, they're kind of ironing out, is it the application, technical level, both? What is it? As far as computers and technology go, most of our technology courses are more in our district are geared towards more graphic design, AV. And those would not, because they're not computer programming. However, we do have access to computer programming courses through our CT Excel program that would count as well. Our social studies is staying the same. It's still 3. Where'd it go? 3. PE, no change. Health, no change. Keep in mind in that health class, if I put it on CPR is a requirement. The kids do not have to pay for the certification. They all go through it in health class. We see a lot of our kids that lifeguard or maybe babysit, or depending on what job they have, they ask for that. They pay for that certificate later. Personal finance. It used to be able to be done in like a one-night presentation or a one-day presentation, and we required it as a 0.5 as a credit, and that is what it's going to. It's the 0.5. Fine arts, no change, still at 1. So depending on how you change things up there, your electives obviously change down below. And then we as a district require a technology class, 0.5. Oh, there's a CPR. FAFSA, the state had nothing written as far as high school graduation requirements. We do offer it to all students. It used to be in the evening. And if we still did that, I wouldn't have said all completed because it was just who showed up type of thing. But we now do it on that. We did it at the end of first quarter in October. All the kids came together. A family could opt out and not do it. And that is what the new requirement will, we have to offer it to all, but a family can opt out. But we have to do that kind of during our school day so we can make sure every kid has access to it. This is something new, and they are working on creating a list of post-secondary assets. We have that within our IPS process, but there's really no teeth in it. And so I'm going to show you these list of 2 screens here. Okay, these are the career and real world examples. And so they are going, the state will create a list. We cannot take away or add to it. It's the state's list. And every kid has to have at least 2 items from here. So these are just the career and real world examples. And I'm going to bring it back up, but just a second. There are academic examples. And we just have to record the 2 that each kid has. I have
They can be 2 from either list.
1 and 1, yeah.
Okay, it doesn't have to be both. I was just,
So I'm gonna give a huge shout out to all of our people working on our IPSs. Hadn't even seen this asset piece. But if you look right here, workplace learning experience directly connected to your student IPS, we are requiring that of every kid at some point during high school. It starts with a job shadow as a sophomore. And then there's other opportunities your junior and senior year. So every kid will have that one, and we're working on senior project already for starting next year. So doing some work on it now, but it will be in place. And that senior project is sharing your IPS with others. So we feel really good about that. Some kids will have multiple assets, but they have to have at least 2. So,
and these are potential, these are not what the state is. This is potentially what's on the list. They're still negotiating as to what counts.
okay, they're still working on it and defining, like, what does 2 or more high school activities mean? Does that
Right.
mean were you in there for the whole season, for a whole year?
Right.
Like FBLA is a year long, where basketball is a season, so what does that mean? So they're working on that definition of what that means. The next part is the competency and mastery, that has always been a choice out there. It's been a district decision. I would say right now you see that in isolation in classrooms. It is something that you tend to see in a lot of our CTE classes. Welding is a great example. They have a list of different welds that the kids go through, and once they master, they just go on to the next one. But I want to give an example that kind of a first order thing that was shared in the advisory. So let's say we have we don't live in metropolitan area, but let's give an example. If I was in Kansas City and my child made it to the national gymnastics team or the national figure skating team and was set to maybe participate in Olympics or world championships and had to go to practice for 3 hours every night. And I just asked that my freshman, instead of going to PE class, could count that as a PE credit. It would depend on the sport, if it did meet the components, but maybe I could put in and ask for that to count for my PE credit. It wouldn't count for my health, but it could for my PE, maybe help me get home an hour earlier. Maybe I am in 4-H and I'm an officer and I lead a par law group. Maybe that could be my communications credit. I know we actually ran through some of those kids that are in our own district, because that was an example given to me, and most of those kids are in college speech. You know, they don't take the high school speech, they want a college speech class. So there's a lot to be learned there, and we will look at that.
So do we as a district have to come up with our policy guidelines? For
We
example,
can, but we
my
don't
kid
have
is in
to.
4-H, I want to just,
Well, we would
excuse them
have-
from speech. I'm just saying that is a very difficult road as a board policy.
It is,
law.
and it is something that I don't know that we would have that in this first go round, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
The vehicle's there if we want to pursue it, and that's something that our group will talk about, and that's also why it's kind of at the bottom, like, is that something we want to do? Is it needed? What does it look like? And we are in February bringing in, it was on my PD thing, we're bringing in a lady from Greenbush we have a teacher rep from each building plus our admin team. That's going to be our instructional meeting. She's going to talk through what it is and what it isn't and what it can be. And, then that'll just give us an avenue to talk about it. It's something that will you'd have to have something written in order to honor and do that type of thing. So we'll have to see where we end up. It might be down the way, and that's okay. So, but that's just an overview. Again, they're working on the details, but the biggest is that it's the 7th graders. I'm excited to see the STEM piece in there. We have a lot of kids already taking advantage of upper level courses and those things, and hopefully if we have some kids interested in computer programming, we can get them geared towards some of those classes as well. So
When I first heard they were gonna change the requirements, I thought they were just weakening them to make it easier for people to graduate, but it really does look like they are trying to help our Kansas graduates be more job ready.
Yeah.
That this is more, it's less important that you have, I don't know, trig and calc than it is, I guess that's not a good example because they really didn't change the math, but, or that you have a higher level literature class, or can you communicate effectively while you're at work? I like the changes that they made. They actually seem to make sense.
So that's just kind of an overview, and we'll be back later to.
I'd be interested in hearing more about the STEM electives and what that may mean for class offerings in our district. Just because it sounds like,
We will have a
this
list
is
of
one thing that
candidates.
sometimes it doesn't work for every student.
Mhm.
So the things that you offered there in the electives, I just would be interested in knowing the list that we have to
Well,
pull from, because
And
that
I,
is.
we will have a list, but when it comes to like the construction side and the ag side,
Yeah.
we have a lot of classes that
The
we,
fit.
that we offer.
Right, thanks. That moves us to the executive session piece. We'll take a couple minute break and we'll come back. I move we go into executive session to discuss the superintendent contract pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under KLMA. The open meeting shall resume at 7:55 here in this room. The executive session will include the board and council.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Yes.
Is there any research that you want done? Yeah, perfect. As a part of the negotiation process, and if you think it would impact our letter, we can go in, but. We're gonna do the typical, gather the data around salaries, what percents would be, what the increase in cost is. Those really regular traditional things we do, but it would be more of, is there any unique things that you guys want me to work on in the next couple of months related to negotiation?
And aside from the normal things, I don't think that, there's nothing in my perspective.
Enforcement with our administrators on allowing people to take days off before a holiday and after a holiday. Because it happens a lot.
We can collect some data.
We have because I think there's language in there that says you're not supposed to take the day off before or after a holiday, and that's been allowed to happen.
Gather some stuff on it.
We don't need executive session then. Correct? Okay. Then we'll move on to the personnel section. That's some employments, some resignations, and some retirements. As well as a whole lot.
I move to approve the personnel report, including supplemental updates as presented.
Second that motion. The motion is second. Any further questions? All those in favor? Carries 7-0. Next item is renewal of superintendent contract. I move that we extend superintendent contract for another year ending on the 30th day of June 2025.
Second.
Then a motion is second. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?